Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Testing Psychologist podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jeremy Sharp, licensed psychologist, group practice owner, and private practice coach. Many of y'all know that I have been using therapy notes as our practice EHR for over 10 years now. I've looked at others, and I just keep coming back to therapy notes because they do it all. If you're interested in an EHR for your practice, you can get 2 free months of therapy notes by going to thetestingpsychologist.com/therapy notes and enter the code TESTING. This episode is brought to you in part by PAR. The Personality Assessment Inventory Bariatric compiles the results of the PAI into a useful report for bariatric surgery candidates. Available on PAR iConnect, PAR's online assessment platform. You can visit parinc.com/PAIBR. Hello, folks. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm glad to be here with you. Today is a business episode, and we are talking about marketing. Now, we have talked about marketing many times on the podcast. I get that. And I think that my guest today comes at it from a little bit of a different perspective. It's titled Uncomplicated Marketing for a reason. So Racheal Cook is an award-winning business strategist, host of the Promote Yourself to CEO podcast, and founder of the CEO Collective. She's on a mission to end entrepreneurial poverty for women specifically. Over the last 15 years, she's helped thousands of women entrepreneurs design predictably profitable businesses without hustle and burnout. She's a sought-after speaker on entrepreneurship, marketing, and productivity, and she's been featured by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, Forbes, Inc., Fast Company, and Female Entrepreneur Association. When she's not helping women entrepreneurs, you will find her hiking along the James River and playing board games with her 3 kids. So Racheal and I talk about all the different aspects of marketing that we get wrapped up in and which ones are actually helpful and how to choose your marketing. So we cover things like networking for introverts, the role of social media, and even tackle the topic of growth without any marketing whatsoever. This is a pretty rich episode. We start with a discussion not about marketing at all, but about burnout and Racheal's personal journey. And I think there's a lot to take from it. So, won't keep you any longer. Let's get to my conversation with Racheal Cook. Racheal, hey, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, I am too. It really caught my eye, when we're talking about marketing and growth without marketing. That's a nice tagline, kind of, interesting topic to catch people's attention. So we're going to talk about that and lots of other things, but we'll give people a little teaser that we're going to talk about how to grow without necessarily marketing. So welcome. Thanks for being here. I'll start with the question that I start with every time, which is, why this is important to you and of all the things you could do with your life, why focus on this topic?
Yeah, this is such a great way to open this conversation because I think like a lot of people, I went to school and did all the things, checked all the boxes of, being a high achiever in my life. I finished college early. Check. Got my master's degree. Check. Got married. Check. Found the 6-figure job. Check. But I was in that 6-figure job. I had finished my MBA in entrepreneurship and small business, and I went directly into the world of consulting. And if anybody knows anything about the world of consulting, it's pretty brutal. They work you very, very hard. You work 80 to 100 hours a week. You don't get to choose the clients you're working with. So I was doing small business consulting, but it was for industrial pump manufacturing or electrical engineering firms or utility design companies, like these bigger companies that, I'm not too interested in paper processing plants. So I learned a lot, and I am really lucky in that I have, between my master's degree and my consulting career, I got a big education in the world of business and how business works. But I burned out very quickly, which is a huge topic right now in general, but I actually got to the point where I was sick. I took a medical leave of absence to go focus on my health. And that was the experience that had me leaving my career and starting my own business because I found myself crying on a yoga mat, as you do when you have realized that everything you've worked so hard for and got all the accolades for is not what you actually want.
Mm,
And my yoga teacher said to me, Racheal, I know you don't think you want to go back to consulting. You're not sure what your next step is, but can you help me out with my yoga studio? And that was a light bulb moment for me that I realized most of the small businesses that I was engaging with, because I love yoga, I love holistic health, there's like a lot of things that I love to be a consumer of. I realized they're all owner operated and they don't have a lot of resources to learn how to grow their business or run their business. But here I had all this incredible background that could really help them. So that was in 2008. I left my corporate job. I started working with, honestly, mostly yoga studios, holistic healthcare centers, and that kind of evolved very slowly into healing and helping entrepreneurs and businesses, functional medicine doctors, massage therapists, chiropractors, just a whole ton of people who were really passionate about the work that they were doing. They were making a positive difference in the world, but they didn't go to school for business. They didn't have a business background. They didn't understand all of the different things that go into running a business. So I've spent the
mhm.
last 15 years really making it my mission to help them get the business stuff in place so that they can show up and do what they really want to do, what is their passion.
Yeah, yeah. I love those stories. I mean, this is why I was drawn to talking with you because there's so many businesses you could work with, but you've got this kind of personal connection to the healing professions, the holistic health, the mental
Yep.
health. I mean, that's different, I think, than just a quote unquote marketing person or business consultant, right? There's some meaning there, and that counts for a lot.
I actually think it makes me better at what I do because I use all the services of the types of people that I work with. So, like,
Hmm.
it helps that I've been through trauma therapy. It helps that, believe it or not, I have a dad who's a recovering alcoholic. So I've done a lot of recovery work. Like I've done so much of the work that my clients want to do more of.
Hmm.
And so really it ends up being a great asset to them because in a way I'm kind of their ideal client. I'm somebody who loves the ability to go and better yourself, to heal your past, to stop generational trauma in its tracks. I'm one of those people in my family who's just been really active in doing that myself. And so when my clients come to me, I'm like, okay, I know exactly what we need to do because you're looking for more people like me. Now, let me tell you exactly how to find more people like me who are
Hmm.
excited about it, who are on board, who will happily pay for your services, and who will actually come back to you again and again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That personal connection counts for a lot.
Yeah.
You said something at the beginning, telling your story that I'm gonna go back to just for a second. It sounds like you're kind of, I mean, ahead of the curve, unfortunately, with this whole like burnout and finding your purpose and
Yeah.
existential crisis kind of thing. So I'm curious. Like, I feel like I'm having that conversation with people a lot over the last 6 months in particular. I don't know what it is, or maybe it's just I'm, more aware of it. But I'm curious for you, kind of working in this space. Do you feel like there's an increase in these conversations lately for some reason, or am I just imagining
Yes.
that?
Absolutely. There's a massive increase. It's so interesting because when I first understood burnout and I was going through it myself, I mean, they didn't really have a diagnosis for this. I just got a lot of diagnosis, right? Like you have
Mm,
depression, you have anxiety, you
mm,
are struggling with adrenal fatigue. I mean, all sorts of things kind of all at the same time. Um, and now it's so interesting because I believe the World Health Organization has said burnout is going to be one of our biggest problems in this generation. And it makes sense because right now, I know everybody thinks we're past the pandemic, but let's face it, like things have not been quote unquote normal for a very extended time and people are not used to that. Like we are not as humans meant to be in these long periods of uncertainty. We're not meant to be on a 24/7 news cycle of just all the horrible things happening in the world. And honestly, like I see for, especially because I work with women entrepreneurs, and I'm going to get on my soapbox for just a second.
Yeah.
Women have been holding up our society because of huge systemic issues that we have. And it's been the unpaid labor of women and caregivers that has been really holding things up through this extended period. And it's so traumatic to so many people. So it doesn't surprise me at all when people are running up against burnout, especially if you are a caregiver in your life, especially if you have systemic things that are not offering the level of support that you really need. If we start thinking about things like childcare and healthcare, all of these different things that would make it easier for so many of us to navigate uncertainty, we don't have those to fall back on at all.
Right.
And then when you look at people who are in the healthcare field, anybody who is like therapist burnout is massive right now. Physician burnout is massive right now. Anybody in the healthcare field is burning out so fast. And we are actually running into shortages of people everywhere. So we're like in this cycle that is going to continue to get worse unless there's bigger systemic changes. Because we've been shoring it all up with like duct tape and string and, women's unpaid labor. But at some point, like there's got to be changes where there's more support given to people so that caregivers, therapists, healthcare workers, all these people that are supposedly essential to society are not being treated as if they're essential to society.
Right.
So there's my soapbox right there.
Yeah. Well, I know there are people out there who are listening who are probably like clapping, maybe literally or figuratively, because it's so true. I mean, I think I'm on board with everything that you just said. These are all factors that are contributing. I feel like we're maybe just getting to that point of sort of, I don't know if the word is letting down after the pandemic and starting to relax a little bit, but that's when we know that like our, immune systems kind of like flare back up and any number of other things,
Absolutely.
It's
just ongoing right now. And I think this is one of the biggest reasons I'm so passionate about talking about these types of things with business owners, especially. I talk a lot about how to build a life first business and how to protect the asset, which is you, the business owner. Because if you're not taking care of yourself, you can't move this business forward. And once you get to the point where you're in burnout, this is a stat that really shocked me. They say it takes up to 3 years to fully recover from true burnout. So it's not just you need a vacation. It's you need to fundamentally look at the way your life is structured, your business is structured, and make sure it's structured in a way that allows you to prioritize taking care of yourself first, filling that cup first before you're taking care of all your patients and taking care of your whole team and taking care of your family. It's a lot of people who are needing our emotional labor. They're needing our bandwidth. And if we don't prioritize ourselves and we don't build our businesses in a way that allow us to do that, then it's just a matter of if, not when, you're going to bump up against that burnout.
Yeah, 100%. I like that I know we're kind of veering off. We didn't really set the intention of talking about burnout, but I think setting this frame is important because it flows really nicely into our discussion. I titled the episode Uncomplicated Marketing. And I think that dovetails really well with, okay, like how do we do this? How do we build our businesses or, scale or maintain or whatever you want to call it without it completely maxing us out and leading to burnout, right? And just being another thing that is draining for us.
And I think it's like anything. It's being super intentional instead of just letting things happen in your business and doing things because you feel like you should or you see other people doing them. Instead, getting really intentional and asking, okay, what actually works for me? And how do I make sure I'm prioritizing that and just letting go of anything that's a distraction? Because it's really easy, especially in marketing your business, to feel like you have to do everything and you have to be everywhere. But I'm here to tell you, you don't have to be everything to everybody, be on every platform, be an influencer. You don't have to do any of those things to effectively grow your business.
Yeah. Well, that's safe to say people are probably very interested at this point. So, yeah, where do we start here? I mean, I like this idea of kind of designing it deliberately. So, where do
Yeah.
you start with folks and figuring out what actually works, but is also sustainable?
Yeah. The first thing I would recommend anybody do is start with your clients. Start with
Hmm.
your clients and think about where are they coming from. So there's an exercise I'll often give a lot of my clients, which is look through the last 10 new clients you've taken on and then figure out where did they come from. And just this one exercise is going to be very illuminating because it's going to tell you, did they come from a referral? Did they look you up and find you on Google? So they found you through Google My Business or SEO, something like that. Did they find you on social media? Did they find you on a directory like Psychology Online? It's going to give you a lot of information. If you don't know this information, then the first thing you need to do in your intake process is have a thing that says, how did you find out about me? And get this information because it will very quickly tell you what is and isn't working. So often when I'm working with especially healing and helping entrepreneurs, their number one source of clients is usually referrals.
Hmm.
But they often have zero plan for how they're going to generate more referrals. And instead, they think they need to post more on Instagram. We don't need
Hmm.
to do that if none of the clients in that 10 most recent list did not actually come from Instagram. We need to focus on where they actually came from. So that's my first step here.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And just to provide as much context for people, why is that important? Why, and this may be a dumb question, but why is it important to know where your referrals are coming from?
Because if you don't know where they're coming from, you're just going to waste a lot of time and energy guessing.
Yeah.
And this is the biggest thing when it comes to marketing. You want to track how people are going through the process of finding out about you. So the very first step is attract. It's where you're getting in front of those people for the very first time. They've never heard about you before, but now they're actively hearing about you. So it could be from a referral. It could be that they went to Google. It could be that, they've happened to stumble across your video on TikTok. However, they happen to find you as that very first step. But we want to know where they came from and ask people. The next thing is we want them to engage with us. So we want that person to go from hearing about you to taking the next step and actually getting in contact with you. And for a lot of people in healing spaces, the next step is going to be getting on your calendar, right? For that
Hmm.
initial consult. Like that is the action we want people to take. If a referral is being sent to us, we want them to book that initial consult. If they're on Google My Business, we want them to book that initial consult. Once we have them book that initial consult, then we can take them through the next steps of bringing the, deciding if they aren't a fit for your services and then enrolling them in the client in becoming a client. But the first part of it is just getting in front of them. And that's the hardest part, to be honest, because usually it means you have to make yourself visible and you have to proactively ask for those referrals.
Yes. I think that's the tough part. So
Yes.
maybe we take a little detour and talk about that for a bit. How you actually get in front
Yeah.
of people, how you ask, how you make yourself visible. Because you've heard this a million times. I've heard this a million times. I'm an introvert. I don't want to network. I hate these events. Like, I don't know what to say. Is there anything I can do where I can just sit in my office and get clients? So all those kinds of questions. I'd love to dig into
Yeah.
that.
Well, I'm actually hugely introverted and I do sit in my office and get clients because of the things I put in place. And I think the mistake a lot of people make is they think they have to change their personality, suddenly become like this extroverted person who can like go into any room and find a client. That's just not how it works. But we need to know that business is built at the speed of relationships. So it's all about building relationships. And part of that is being able to identify the types of relationships you already have. So when it comes to referrals,
Hmm.
there's a couple types. They're not all one size fits all. They're all a little bit different and you're going to approach them differently. The first is yes, client referrals. So, how many times have you had a client come in and they're saying, "Hey, my friend so and so told me I should talk with you."
Hmm.
That's a great referral source because that client probably had a good experience with you, right? If they're telling somebody they should come see you. So they're already giving you that transfer of trust. They're already giving you some credibility there when that referral comes in. The hard part is getting clients to proactively tell people about you. And not everybody
Right.
will do that, right? Because it is a field, and this is with any healing and helping field, it can be a little vulnerable to share that you're seeing a therapist, you're going through testing for something, you're getting support in this area that maybe you want to keep private. So you won't have all of your clients be referral sources. That's just not going to happen because of the nature of the work. But you might find a few who are. And these are always like the super connectors. If you have a book of clients, let's say you have 100 people who are actively seeing you in some way, if you look through, you probably know a couple, like 2 to 5, who are the people who you know because of your relationship with them. These people are pretty engaged in their community. They're probably leaders in different ways in their community, whether it's at work or in, a nonprofit they're a part of or an organization they're a part of. These are the people who are the natural connectors, and they've probably already talked to you a lot about all the relationships they have and the different ways they're involved in different organizations and communities. They might have even sent you referrals. You only need a couple of those people in order to start generating more referrals. Because these are the people who they're the ones who their friends know if I need to find a new doctor, if I need to find a new therapist, if I need to find a physical therapist for my broken toe, they are the person in their networks that everybody calls because they're like, so-and-so knows everyone. So identify those people. That's one big tip. Just identify those people. You don't need everyone. You just need a few of them. And then I want you to think about those individuals because they're individuals, right? And they're going to be different ways you can connect with them. For some of them, it could be directly saying, hey, I know you're super well connected in this community. Do you know of any of the groups you're a part of who are looking for someone to come in and talk about XYZ? Or if you're very clear about what you're looking for, let's say they're super involved in the school community. Maybe they're very involved in their PTA or they're on the school board or something. You could say, hey, I am looking to get connected to people who can, who are looking for testing for their kids. I know that's something you and I talked about in our pre-call, that people are looking for testing for, ADD or whatever it might be for their children. I'm looking to get connected to school counselors. I'm looking to get connected to the school mental health services. Do you happen to know anyone who you could do an introduction? So it could be that simple. It could be asking for that introduction. It could be, I'm looking to come in and speak or teach a workshop, teach a mini training. That can often be a great way to get in front of people. And it's often, honestly, easier if you're looking for people who are involved in organizations compared to people who maybe only have their friends and family. It's kind of awkward to ask for referrals of friends and family, but asking for an introduction in a professional sense of I'm looking to get connected to this organization. I'm looking to get connected to this school district. I'm looking to get connected in this community group. They always have opportunities to network. They always have opportunities for speaking or for coming in and being a guest teacher, guest workshop. All you have to do is say, I'm interested in this type of opportunity, and start asking those people who you think might have those connections.
Yeah, yeah. I love that idea. I'm going to get super granular with this question and, think about, so for us, in testing practices, most of the time we have, anywhere from, people are going to yell at me, but I'll say 8 to 20, active clients, quote unquote, evals that might be happening at the same time. But the rest of our folks are maybe on an email list or, they live in our electronic health record or something. And so I wonder, when you reach out to these super connectors, which is great, is this an email? Is it a phone call? How do you explain the cold, kind of out of the blue nature of it? These are the questions people always ask. Well, I don't know what to say exactly, or do I need to give them warning, or they're going to be bothered, or stuff like that.
So a little secret is I tend to find most people are excited to help in some way. And so if you position it in a way that it is, hey, I'd like to ask your help for something, and position it that way, people are usually pretty happy to help. And that's different than just feeling like you're pitching them. I'm looking for help finding an introduction like this, and I was wondering if you might happen to know somebody. If not, no worries. But I thought of you instantly because I know you're such a super connector in XYZ community. Usually people are pretty flattered that you think of them, and so you want to think of it like you're not asking something that's to go buy something or give $1 million to you. You're asking for an introduction. Usually that'll go over okay. I would probably do email unless you have a personal connection with that particular person. And sometimes that happens, right? Like every person is different. I know for my therapist, we text back and forth quite a lot, and we've built that relationship because we've known each other for so long. And it's gotten to, so I think you have to use your own level of discernment about who you're talking with. And it's definitely easier to approach somebody who you've got a more established, more friendly relationship with than someone who you just kind of met, right? So if it's someone you just kind of met, maybe you're not pitching them or reaching out to them about something like this. But if it's someone who you really know and you know what they're up to in the community, I think it's probably going to be just fine.
Yeah, yeah. No, I like this. I'm already kind of thinking of folks, even for myself, and that does that. Yeah, that feels like a good fit. I could see
Yeah.
several people
And
being open
another
to that.
thing you can do if you send out emails on a regular basis, whether it's one-on-one, like you're sending a reminder email or you're sending notes or, resources or whatever, change the footer of your email um, to ask for what you're looking for, right? The fastest way to manifest what you want is to ask for it. So put it in your footer. Say, P.S. I'm looking for opportunities to teach a workshop on fill in the blank at schools, moms groups, whatever you're looking at. Please let me know if you could connect me with someone to make it happen. Like you could put a little PS in your footer. That makes it really easy because then it just, a little PS is a great way to tuck this stuff into.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I think we forget about that. It's very straightforward. It's super easy. Everybody sees it. And
Exactly.
yeah, yeah, this is good. So we're kind of talking about we we kind of went down the path of the introverts approach.
Mhm.
If you don't want to just be, going to parties and networking events and so forth, it's like this one-on-one and giving talks, which I think a lot of us actually enjoy, because we get to be the expert and do some teaching and it's familiar content. Like that all kind of fits for me. So
Yeah.
I wonder, yeah.
I was just going to say, I think this is another thing that is just a hidden opportunity. A lot of people don't realize there's so many organizations that are looking for speakers. And the thing is, you have to have an idea of the topic. You have to have a bullet point of like what you're going to give them. You might want to have like a 20-minute version, a 40-minute version, a 60-minute version. It's a lot harder to do a 20-minute thing than 60 minutes, right? So you have to be a lot more concise and clear. If you have that all together and you can say, hey, I'm interested in coming doing these things, it could be a training, it could be a workshop. There's a lot of organizations right now. This is a really hot tip for anybody in the world of therapy right now. There's a lot of organizations that are specifically looking for stress management. They're terrified of burnout. There's organizations and businesses and corporations everywhere that are so stressed out that they're having so much turnover. They're having a lot of difficulty getting people to like stay a long time in those roles. Offering something directly that they're looking for and tie it to stress and then bridge into what you do, right? There's a lot of groups out there that are looking for speakers, but you have to have kind of what we would call a one sheet. So, like a one pager that has your name, a short bio, all your credentials and stuff that talks about your area of expertise, and maybe 2 or 3 talk options with some bullet points about, like, hey, I can do this talk. Here's what it is. Here's what you'll get out of it. That will help you get in front of so many great people. These can be paid opportunities. Some of them will be free, but if you go the corporate route, there's a lot of opportunity to get paid as a corporate trainer to come in and talk about stress, to come in and talk about burnout. Those topics are in demand right now.
Yeah, that's such a good point. That's such a good point. Probably 2 or 3 years ago, started getting a lot more podcast pitches, right, for guests. You know how this goes. And
Mhm.
so these one sheets, that was my intro to one sheets, and they are super helpful. Like
Yeah.
I will look at those and be like, oh yeah, I do want to talk about this. Like these are great bullet points. And it it might feel like a leap or a stretch, I think, for just like the, quote unquote normal clinician out there. Like, who am I to have a one sheet, whatever. But I think it's huge. Like, if you can send that to people, if they show some interest, then it's like, yes, I can solve this problem. I can talk about this. And it's an easy shortcut to make the decision quick for them.
It's a great asset to have. And I think about this all the time. Like, whenever I'm doing any sort of marketing in my business, I want to create something once and be able to use it again and again. And the beautiful thing about creating a one sheet and making yourself available as a workshop teacher or speaker is you can send that out to one of these referrals super connectors and say, hey, I'm looking to book a couple talks. This is what I'm talking about. Who do you know maybe that you could forward this to or do an introduction with this? When you make it easy for people to share your work, they're more likely to share your work. If you're asking them to come up from scratch with how to make an introduction, that's harder than saying, hey, so-and-so, I thought of you. I'm putting this together. Please forward to anyone who you think might be, looking for a talk like this. That's so easy. You made it easy to get that referral.
Yes. This is great. I was talking to a colleague the other day about this very similar stuff. Actually, this was kind of interesting timing, but we sort of were talking about this idea of I'm trying to make this as easy as possible for people. Like, if you don't have a topic or an area of expertise, so to speak, or like something prepared, we're brainstorming the idea of, can you go to a business and say, I'll sit in your conference room for 3 hours on a Friday morning and just do an open Q&A on parenting. Like, if anybody is struggling with parenting, like, just tell them to pop by and talk to me, and then it even takes another layer off of you to prepare something amazing, and people just come to you with questions. What do you think about that?
I think that's a great idea. And in fact, if you just give a theme for the Q&A, like you just said, like parenting or whatever it might be, I think that's great, because you're absolutely right. People have a ton of questions, and those questions will become great for you to turn into a workshop down the road. But it also lets you really gauge interest. Like, you'll often see a lot of questions are very similar, or there's like a theme developing from a lot of questions. I think that can be great. Another thing that can be really helpful for maybe somebody who doesn't feel as much like they're a trainer teacher is to collaborate with somebody. And you can do this as almost like a panel style, where maybe you could have a couple people who you have complementary skill sets, or, you work with similar audiences. You could say, hey, we're going to get 3 of us together to offer a panel where we can do Q&A from an audience about this topic. So all of those are a great way to just get in front of people.
This is great. Yeah. So like I said earlier, we're kind of going down this like introvert path. I'm curious, for those of us who are getting the majority of our clients from SEO, or maybe it is social media or some other more, I guess, digital medium, then what does that look like for those folks then? Is it just sort of like stay the course, or is there more to do with that? Let's take a break to hear from a featured partner. Y'all know that I love Therapy Notes, but I am not the only one. They have a 4.9 out of 5-star rating on trustpilot.com and Google, which makes them the #1 rated electronic health record system available for mental health folks today. They make billing, scheduling, note-taking, and telehealth all incredibly easy. They also offer custom forms that you can send through the portal. For all the prescribers out there, Therapy Notes is proudly offering e-prescribe as well. And maybe the most important thing for me is that they have live telephone support 7 days a week, so you can actually talk to a real person in a timely manner. If you're trying to switch from another EHR, the transition is incredibly easy. They'll import your demographic data free of charge, so you can get going right away. So if you're curious, or you want to switch, or you need a new EHR, try Therapy Notes for 2 months, absolutely free. You can go to thetestingpsychologist.com/therapy notes and enter the code TESTING. Again, totally free, no strings attached. Check it out and see why everyone is switching to Therapy Notes. The Personality Assessment Inventory Bariatric, or PAI Bariatric, compiles the results of the PAI into a useful report just for bariatric surgery candidates. Log into PARI Connect, PAR's online assessment platform, where you can administer the PAI and select the bariatric score report to view results based on bariatric presurgical candidate norms. Learn more at parinc.com/PAIBR. Let's get back to the podcast.
So some of them might already be seeing the result of a lot of changes Google is making right now. There's a major shakeup in the world of SEO happening right now.
Yes.
Which means if you have been getting free organic traffic from Google or any other search platform, but let's face it, we all talk about Google. Right. Basically, AI has come in and dumped a bunch of garbage on the internet. And now Google is changing their algorithms and strategies to kind of fight that. Because what started happening as soon as all these AI things came out, it was like churning out garbage content. They were searching and ranking for keywords that, you know, are just to push things down the list. So one thing you can still do is Google My Business or your Google Business profile. I do not see that going away. It is incredibly powerful for anybody who is trying to draw from a local area. And, you know, I know therapists have to be licensed in certain states, so you probably are only looking for people in a certain area. Google My Business is great for that because you can really target locally and it kind of boosts up your rankings. So if you don't have a Google My Business profile or you haven't been posting to it, that's the other part of it. You want to post to it kind of regularly, at least once or twice a week. It doesn't have to be like Twitter where you feel like you have to post all the time, but you do want to make sure that you're posting things that are letting basically the algorithm know, one, you're open and still doing business. You're feeding it important content that is related to what you want to be found for. So let's say you're looking for, you know, you do ADHD testing, then you want to be posting content about ADHD testing. You want to be posting things so those keywords come up. And Google My Business would be probably the biggest play I see right now on SEO that's not getting hit as hard as trying to rank for like general blog posts. So that would be probably my first real thing to look at. The other thing is pay attention to hyper localized sites. We're seeing this a lot right now. It's kind of like the world went from being, you know, you only know who's in your community to the internet exploded us everywhere. And now people want to get back to community. So there's these smaller sites that are popping up that you might want to get involved in. And every city, every town is a little bit different, but they all have, you know, depending on the site, they'll often have opportunities to contribute content, to write for them, to create small posts for them. So in Richmond, there's a blog, richmondmom.com. If I was a therapist, I would be wanting to talk about parenting and raising kids and all the challenges kids have on richmondmom.com. Hyper local. It focuses only on things related to people who are raising children here. But it's the perfect opportunity if I'm wanting to, one, be known in that town, and two, get backlinks to my own website, which is another big part of Google. It's not just search, it's how many significant sites are linking back to you. So that can help quite a lot is if you start focusing on writing or creating content for other websites that are hyper local to you.
I like that. Yeah. A lot of us always talk about the magic of moms groups. And if we can get in with moms groups somehow, it's often a great referral source.
I'm a twin mom, and I can tell you, if you can get in with your local mom of multiples group, you will have I've never seen women refer stuff more than moms of multiples. Like we have to be resourceful because we started out this journey with, you know, being outnumbered. And they love sharing resources. And it's not hard. The thing is, you don't go in there and just start pitching yourself, right? Like nobody likes that. But one, it is so much like you can't pay for this kind of market research. Here's the thing, guys. The more you understand your people, the more you hear the words that they're using, you're going to see the things you could talk about, that you could create a talk about, that you could write content about. You're going to hear from their mouths exactly what they're struggling with. And that is priceless. It is absolutely priceless. So one, if you join these groups, listen first, right? Just listen first. maybe be helpful as necessary. You're a professional. You don't have to like be in there giving free advice or whatever. But if there's like a discussion going on and your local therapist who happens to specialize in what they're talking about, hey, I'm loving this conversation. I'm local here in the community, and here's a resource I created specifically about this. Here's how you can go get it. Not necessarily pitching, come see me, but I have a resource on my website. I have a free thing you can download. I'm an expert, so it's valuable for you. That can be incredibly helpful.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, it's a good reminder. It's a good reminder. Those mom scripts are out there. And especially the moms and multiples. I mean, it's literally like 2 for 1 or 3 for 1,
I mean,
if you end up
we,
landing them as clients. And
yeah, you will keep them for a very long time because we have a
sure.
lot to work on.
Right. Right. So, what about the role of social media? You mentioned social media in the
Yeah.
beginning. I hear it talked about a lot as a shiny object for us because people want to create. It feels like you're doing something, but the question is whether it's actually helpful and is there any
Mm.
ROI on social media investment? So, I'd love to get your perspective on that.
So the first thing I would say is it's a always an it depends question because I have a lot of people who do not need to really worry about social media at all. And the best
Okay.
way for me to know that is going through those last 10 clients you acquired. Are they following you? Do they know that you're on social media? Did they find you from social media? If you're going to do social media, you really have to do it well in order for it to generate any results. So if you're not interested, then it's really not worth it to stress yourself. I would instead focus on Google My Business. I would focus on networking. I would focus on referrals and, maybe some SEO type of things, creating content for your website that boosts your Google rankings and things. Um, but if you're interested in social media and you like it and you have fun with it, I find it's an amazing way to share your expertise. But here's the thing, you got to be willing to put a stake in the ground and say, here's who I am and here's what I specialize in. If you try to be everything for everyone and cover every possible topic under the sun, it kind of blends into the woodwork. It kind of just fades away because it's not clear very, very quickly what you are an expert on. So that's my first thing. If you are going to do it, pick something and go really, really narrow into that topic.
Yep. I like that. And maybe related to that, I think what we're running into now is a bit of a minefield in terms of what to say on social media. There are a lot of people on social media, especially TikTok and Reels and so forth, that are not mental health practitioners, but they certainly are willing to share mental health information and advice, whether it's correct or not. And so I don't know. This is again a very nuanced question, but I wonder if you've run into this or have any thoughts around how to separate ourselves from the vast
Yeah.
amount of information on social media that may or may not be correct.
Well, here's the thing. We can't make it our job to try to fact check everything on the internet because it's not possible. It will just make you absolutely insane. But you have things working for you that maybe a lot of people who are posting that information, that content, they don't have working for them, right? You can put in your bio that you are a credentialed therapist. You can put in your specific area of expertise. You can make sure that's in your bio that you're a clinical um, expert. That's first of all how I would prioritize, making sure that you stand out is just that level of education that you can point to. I think the other thing is, you do want to make sure you're very clear and have kind of limits to what you're going to talk about and share. This is my scope of practice. Here's where I am the expert. I think this is something, again, people who are just talking about everything and anything, they don't have a scope of practice. They're just like, I'll cover it all. Experts know we have a scope of practice. Here's what I know. And we're honest about it, right? Like, I don't actually have expertise in that area. Let me pass you off to my colleague. So I think that can be helpful as well when you're able to talk about that. When it comes to creating content, though, and standing out, I think honestly, if you can simplify some of these things for people, That is a game changer. There's a lot of concepts flying around out there, and there's a lot of like therapy speak flying around out there that has no definition. No one's actually talking about what does this mean? What does this look like in practice? Give me some actual examples. And then suddenly there's all this therapy speak out there, and we're like, okay, there's a gazillion different, definitions for boundaries. What are we talking about? What does this mean? How do we define it? How do we implement this? What does it look like as you implement it? What are the problems people have? That's all amazing content. And if you can come at it from a very easy to understand approach, I find that a lot of people are receptive to that.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Simple is always better. There's a lot
Simple
out
is
there.
always better. There's
Hmm.
a therapist I follow on TikTok right now, actually. And one of the things that I love that she does is she actually breaks out a little whiteboard and kind of charts out some of these concepts. Like I
Hmm.
just watched a whole series she had on different attachment styles. And it was great because, if you've heard these things before, it can be really hard for anybody who's not in this field or haven't had any education in this to understand and wrap your head around these things. But suddenly somebody's sitting there with a whiteboard and being like, hey, let me explain to you these things and how they might be showing up in your family. It was it was so sticky. And you want to watch it because you're like, oh yeah, that's probably my sister. I understand.
It's always your sister. Yeah.
I've only got sisters, so they get the blame for everything.
That's fair. That's totally fair. That sounds good. Are there other ways to get in front of people or build this referral network that we haven't talked about that you want to highlight for us?
I mean, coming back to referrals, the other thing that I think is really valuable is building um kind of like cross industry, cross specialty referrals. Find people who serve similar audiences because you'll be amazed how many people they're working with in some capacity who could also use what you do. And I see it's not just across therapists or counselors, it could be across so many different things. So, for example, with my therapist, I actually found her because of a yoga teacher that I go to see. And it ended up being great because I already kind of knew that we were going to energetically like be very comfortable with each other because she connects with my yoga teacher and I love my yoga teacher. So I think that's something that's a huge opportunity. I see this in my business all the time, and people are always really surprised. Like, I get clients from my chiropractor, which
Hmm.
you wouldn't think would be a thing, but I get clients from my chiropractor because I've worked with her for 3 years. And then I see her personally as well. I'm involved in her community. So anytime she's talking to a small business owner, she's like, you need to go talk to Racheal. Her retreat's coming up. You should attend with me. And it makes it really fun to get people who are like, if they're in community together, you probably like them. You'll probably enjoy working with them. You probably have a similar energy, similar vibe, and it'll be a fun experience.
Right, right. Yes, that totally makes sense to me. Yeah. Find your group. Find your group. I mean, I feel like that's very common in non-mental health industries. Like I hear about that a lot with, it seems like it's always like an attorney, a mortgage guy or woman or non-binary
And a
individual
realtor and an
and a
insurance
realtor
agent.
and an insurance and a financial advisor. Like
Exactly.
and they'd all just like refer. But, for us, it's like other
But literally
psychologists, other
create your
therapists.
version. You have
Yeah.
to create your version of it. And if you think about coming back to your ideal clients, like who are your favorite people to work with? What else are they doing? What else?
Hmm.
Because they're spending money. Everybody's spending money everywhere, right? So if I have my therapist, what other service providers am I going to that might kind of have some overlap? You will be so surprised the overlap between mental health and financial health. Thinking of financial advisors, oh my gosh, do you know that money is like one of the biggest stressors of everybody basically right now? So maybe there's something you could collaborate on. Maybe they're teaching webinars and seminars and workshops, and they want somebody to come in and talk about how to get out of the shame of, your feeling about your money or something like that. Like you could come up with a topic. Mental
I
health
like
and
it.
physical health. Like that's a huge connection. We all know there's a huge mind body connection. there might be an overlap there around something there that you can do. I think that's where you just have to be willing to get creative. And just because you haven't seen it before doesn't mean it's not possible. Doesn't mean there's not an opportunity to collaborate in some way.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great point. I know, gosh, we've already covered a ton. It's been great. I'm thinking so much about our conversation. I do want to touch on this idea. Back when I started in 2009, there was blogging was like huge, and
Yep.
blogging continues. I hear it here and there. I mean, is there any place for something like that, like regularly blogging or other kinds of like content that's not social media? Or maybe
Yes.
overlaps with social media. Where does that fit
Absolutely.
in?
We are seeing this right now a lot because we are seeing a shift away from like short form content to longer form content, which is really great. So, blogging is getting a huge comeback right now. And I think what I love about it the most is this is your opportunity to create a body of work where people can come and understand your philosophy, your approach, your thoughts on the types of things that you see. It's a great way to boost your search engine optimization and get known for your specific topic. It also is content that you can repurpose in a million other ways. But something as we're thinking about blogging that I think is coming up right now is look at things like Substack. These platforms are really growing right now. I have several different clients who are experimenting with platforms like Substack. And what's really interesting about it is people are wanting to go back to reading great content. They're wanting to go back to reading great newsletters. And what's cool about Substack is it has a built-in referral engine in it. So if I go to sign up for a new Substack, it'll often say, "Hey, you signed up for this. Are you interested in this newsletter, this newsletter, this newsletter?" And that is fascinating. There's a lot of kind of organic growth happening right there that hasn't happened in a really long time. So I think if that's something you're interested in, the big thing is have a point of view, make it stand out, build content around a specific topic so you really become known for that topic. If you try to write really generic stuff that there's a million articles about already, it's going to be really hard to break through. But if you write about something that is going to stand out and um, honestly kind of shake things up a little bit for people, having a little bit of a divisive opinion is always a great way to get more eyes on something. It will last a long time, a lot longer than a single social media post.
Yeah, yeah. This is another dumb question. I read Substacks. I like Substack. Heard a lot about it and know it's out there. I've never tried to integrate it with our website, for example. So again, very detailed question. Is that something that can kind of link into your website and display for folks who
Yeah.
are, yeah.
Yeah, you can definitely link to your Substack. And I think it's something that you might want to go play with it, explore it, and see how, if you like how it works. If you like it on your end of the experience, then it's worth checking out. If you go through it
Mhm.
and you're like, I don't really like reading stuff like this, then you have to like it in order to follow through with it. That would be a big
100%.
thing. But you can always link to that as well. And you can also, you know, if you write something on a Substack, the other cool thing is you can have private versions versus public versions. You can build paid lists, which is kind of interesting. I have a couple different people who are building subscription newsletters where people are paying for that content. And I think it's so many different opportunities if you like to write.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I want to pivot to our last topic, which is growth without marketing. That's super
Yeah.
interesting. But before we do that, I just, distilling all this down, what I'm taking from our discussion is essentially figure out the intersection of where your clients are coming from and what you actually enjoy doing and what you're drawn to, and don't force yourself into creating this TikTok account if you hate being on social media, or like writing these blogs if you hate to write. Like there's so many, like any of these, there are many paths to the top of the mountain. It's just figuring out what
Yes.
fits for you.
Absolutely. And I tell my clients this all the time. If you like to write, find a way to write. If you like talking, I do. I have a podcast. I'm on podcasts because I like to talk.
Hmm.
Video, some people love it, some people hate it. Some people just learn to live with it, like I have. So I do TikTok, even though I'm not really someone who's like videoing myself all the time. But I think if you lean into what you naturally are kind of more aligned with, it's just going to be easier. And if it's easier, you're more likely to follow through with it. And if you follow through with it consistently, you're more likely to get the result you want. But you've got to be willing to pick one thing and really, put some effort behind it.
Yes. Okay. That's a nice note to pivot on. I do want to talk about growth without marketing. So let's dig into that for a bit before we wrap up. What does
Yeah.
that even mean? How do you grow without marketing? This seems
There's actually
antithetical.
a lot of ways to grow without marketing because marketing is all about getting that client in the door. Growth is about increasing your revenue, right? So here's the biggest thing about growth that a lot of people need to know. There's a couple different routes to growth. One is getting more clients, and that's where marketing comes in. So you're doing all of the getting more referrals, getting more people to come to your website, book that first consult. Growth comes once that consult has completed, and now you've enrolled them as a client, you've signed them as a client. It's increasing that lifetime customer value is one of the biggest things you can do. And there's a couple ways you can do that. One is have people stay with you longer. So we have to be clear as therapists, like you just don't want to do that for no reason. You have to have a real reason for them to stay with you, right? I'm assuming that's kind of a rule somewhere. But you want to have an idea of about how long your average client stays with you. If you don't know how long your average client stays with you, then one, it's really hard to plan your business because you never really know your capacity. So think about one, how long your average client stays with you. The second thing is how much your average client pays you. Those two numbers will give you a lot of information. Okay. And that would be information I track every single month as anybody in the healing helping space. Because if people are not staying with me on average as long as, most of my average, if they're way below, I'm going to be wondering, why are they falling off? That's an opportunity to maybe get curious and think about how long should it be? How long, on average am I seeing people? And is there something I can do better on my end to make sure those people continue coming and I retain them for the appropriate amount of time? So that's one thing to think about. It's just pay attention to how much time you're spending with each individual client. The next thing is to maybe start thinking about layering in different price points. And this is something that I know a lot of people in the healing and helping space can kind of struggle with because they're like, I'm used to getting paid my session rate. I haven't really built out anything that's different than that. But I'm seeing several of my clients right now who are trauma therapists, and they have been doing these intensives that are more of a high price point. And what's incredible is they're coming from their regular client base, right? These people are coming in, working with them as a trauma therapist one-on-one, and then they're going, you know what would be really great if I can do your intensive, come spend 2 days with you, and suddenly that's a 4-figure investment. That is a huge opportunity. You don't need a lot of them, but if you can offer a higher price point service, that can be really, really valuable, especially when you can make it very specialized. So a trauma therapy intensive, super specialized. So that's perfect for that. The final thing I think about when it comes to non-marketing ways to grow is thinking about, and this is a bigger picture idea for your business, but thinking about how you can absorb other practices. This is something I'm seeing a lot. We talked about burnout. There's a huge number of people who are leaving the field. There's a lot of people who are going to retire at some point. We're seeing this across the board for a lot of industries where there's people who are getting ready to shut down their private practices and they don't have anyone to take over. And most of them are just going to shut it down. They're not going to look for a successor. They're not going to look to sell their practice. But if they've been in practice for a while, then they probably already have really good referrals coming in. They have great connections coming in. Like they have enough clients. So that's another opportunity long-term for people. And I think a lot of us don't think about that, but there's an opportunity there to, bring in somebody's practice if they're getting ready to close the doors, purchase it, create some sort of buy-sell agreement there. We can get into the weeds of that in another time. But that's something I think is really big. And a lot of people just don't think about that. It's also cool that when you get ready to retire, you can be thinking about what would my practice be worth if I wanted to sell it to someone else. It's a huge opportunity for you to actually, kind of get that equity out of your business.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think this is on many of our radars at this point. Certainly not I mean, I'm hearing more conversations about selling practices. I still think it's pretty rare, especially for smaller
Yes.
groups. But the acquiring other practices, I do not hear many people talking about at all. And it seems like a daunting process. It's intimidating. Nobody really knows how to do it, on either side, honestly. But it's nice to get this on our radars as a possibility where, yeah, there are several. I mean, yeah, I think we're getting to that point. Like folks are retiring, wanting to get out of their practices, and there may be opportunities. Do you have any thoughts or tips, I suppose, on finding those folks, and even like how does that conversation get started?
Honestly, a lot of these are going to come organically, right? It's going to come from if you're looking to absorb a practice that's local to you or just in your state, you're going to probably hear about it organically through your network. There are different business brokers who can go out there and help you find a business to acquire, but
Mhm.
yeah, it's going to be a little bit of a process. It is a
Mhm.
process. I'm not going to lie about that at all. But I've had several people who've doubled or tripled their business through an acquisition, and they also inherit the team of that acquisition. They also inherit the office spaces of that acquisition. So it can be a great way to grow your practice, especially if you're wanting to grow group practice. That's where I tend to see the opportunity for this.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, these are all just, I mean, good things for people to be thinking about. I think that's another theme of this interview is just new ideas and new possibilities, and we're going to be processing through this and
Absolutely.
just finding what fits, right?
Well, it is finding what fits. And I know we kind of threw a lot at everybody. So digest it, let it settle. Maybe there's one or two things that you can take away. And if that's all you take away, I feel like we had accomplished our
Mhm.
objective today. But if you want to know more, I mean, I geek out about marketing, sales, operations, systems, scaling a business. You can come follow my podcast at Promote Yourself to CEO. I have a ton of content over there. And otherwise, just come find me at the ceocollective.com/hello. That's where I have a lot of the downloadable resources that I've created on how to grow your business. I'd love to share those with you.
Yeah, that's super cool. We'll make sure to link to all that stuff in the show notes as well. And I'm guessing people will reach out. This is great. I might reach out. Rachel, this is I want to talk to you some more. These are fantastic ideas. So, yeah, thanks for coming on. This is a great conversation. I love your energy and all the knowledge that you're willing to share with us.
Well, thanks so much for having me. And I cannot wait to connect with all of your listeners. So thanks for listening.
All right, y'all. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. Always grateful to have you here. I hope that you take away some information that you can implement in your practice and in your life. Any resources that we mentioned during the episode will be listed in the show notes, so make sure to check those out. If you like what you hear on the podcast, I would be so grateful if you left a review on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you're a practice owner or aspiring practice owner, I'd invite you to check out the Testing Psychologist mastermind groups. I have mastermind groups at every stage of practice development, beginner, intermediate, and advanced. We have homework, we have accountability, we have support, we have resources. These groups are amazing. We do a lot of work and a lot of connecting. If that sounds interesting to you, you can check out the details at thetestingpsychologist.com/consulting. You can sign up for a pre-group phone call and we will chat and figure out if a group could be a good fit for you. Thanks so much. The information contained in this podcast and on the Testing Psychologist website are intended for informational and educational purposes only. Nothing in this podcast or on the website is intended to be a substitute for professional psychological, psychiatric, or medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Please note that no doctor-patient relationship is formed here, and similarly, no supervisory or consultative relationship is formed between the host or guests of this podcast and listeners of this podcast. If you need the qualified advice of any mental health practitioner or medical provider, please seek one in your area. Similarly, if you need supervision on clinical matters, please find a supervisor with an expertise that fits your needs.